Okay, I'd like to call the North Branford special meeting for the Public Safety Communications Committee together at 4:08. Salute to the flag. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, it's going to be you and me. So, Marie Diamond and myself. Update on presentation by Paul Zito of New England Radio Communications. Paul, thank you for coming.
Thanks for inviting me.
Hopefully you'll have some news for us and
I
some
do.
direction.
I have some direction. I don't know if it's good news, but I have direction. So this process has been going on for a while. We started out with a questionnaire to the users, and what I did was I included this one slide here in the presentation just to kind of set the stage. Delivered audio quality is what we look for in a public safety communication system. And the third line, fourth line down is really what we shoot for. We would like to see a DAC 3. DAC 3.4 is very acceptable. And we try to design within those parameters. Anything with a higher number is overkill, and anything lower is unacceptable for a public safety system. So it's really hard to see that up on the screen. But what we did was part of the research that was done was buildings that needed to be covered, if at all possible. And this is really a fire department driven requirement, because they really are in the buildings more than the police department is in the buildings that fighting fires or EMS calls. So we developed a list with both the police department and the fire department of the buildings that we needed to cover, and really covered the type of construction. There's different densities of buildings. Obviously, something like Honeywell is a high-density building, and a residence is a low-density building. So we try to design, again, minimum DAC 3.0 for a high-density building. So these are all the different buildings that were outlined, again, mostly by the fire department, but also the police department, as desired buildings that needed to be covered. I hesitate to use guaranteed coverage because nothing's guaranteed, but reasonable reliability within these buildings in the center of the buildings. And you'll notice that they're all really along the main roads that run through town. This is a list of all the RF sites that we considered. They were existing towers. The only thing that's not on this list is there's a couple of utility poles that have the electric wires on them. I don't know if you service by CONP or Eversource here, but I did not include those because they carry a very high price tag for repairs for antennas and whatever with redirecting the grid. So as you can see, it's a pretty extensive list. I can make this presentation available. I have it on a thumb drive because it's going to be hard for people to see that. So what I'm trying to point out here is that this was an exhaustive search. What this involves is actually a considerable amount of research and computer time, and we take a combination of all these sites to try to come up with the best what we call constellation or configuration for the system. As we did with the critical coverage buildings, these are all the locations within town that we explored for RF sites. A lot of them are existing, some of them are not. So this is the final constellation that we came up with. and we can talk about this as a caveat to it. So in the upper right-hand corner, up, I don't know if you can see this. No. So in the upper right-hand corner, that's an existing state site. The one in the very bottom is a state site that is being built now, so you get the benefit of using them without any cost to you. The site that's the next up heading north is the Tilcon quarry site. That actually worked out very well because that covered the lower half of town, which the fire department was concerned that we didn't have enough coverage down there. We actually addressed that need. The other site up at the top could be one of two locations. One of them is what I refer to as the ARX site or the school site. That site, for our purposes, could be moved to Station 4, which I believe is the EMS barn. But as you can see, the way the terrain works in town, those two sites fill in the state coverage area very well. This is just a calculation that we got from Motorola through the state, and it talks about coverage. Really, the stuff on the left is just technical information and antenna information. On the right, where you see the green, is coverage of the sites. If we take a look at portable coverage in town using these 4 sites, you can see the portable coverage at street level on a hip with a microphone on the lapel is just about complete coverage in town. Just to point out, we always design to a portable radio on a hip. Once we do that, the mobile units are irrelevant because if we get this kind of coverage on a portable, it's 100% on a mobile unit. And again, this is at street level. We start to look at light construction buildings. We have a few little holes in there, but for the most part, all the critical areas in town are covered. We do have a little bit of a hole in the northeast corner, but quite honestly, these maps are very conservative. These maps were given to us, made specially for the town by Motorola through the state CTS unit. So
Paul, the one on the bottom is the Branford site,
one on the bottom is the Branford site.
and the one at the far top to the right is that's another state facility, but where is that? In Durham?
It's in Durham. It's
Durham.
I can never pronounce it. Well, it's Totocket Mountain, but it's Menanduck, whatever.
Right. And then obviously Tilcon.
Listen, I built that site and I still can't pronounce it.
Okay.
So that's light constructed building.
Mm-hmm.
There's a medium constructed building.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be too concerned with some of these areas that doesn't have some coverage. For the most part, you'll see that large area in the northeast corner. A lot of that is woods up there. And again, these maps are conservative. I'm having trouble digesting the fact that that state site doesn't cover down into town more than it shows. There's your moderately constructed building. Again, it still covers all those areas that the police and the fire department had concerns over. And I'd like to just point out that, we say moderately covered buildings. Where you see that green area that there's no coverage, there are no moderate buildings in a lot of those areas. If you go back to that original map, the light construction, that's houses. And this is heavy constructed buildings, again, buildings like the ice rink, Honeywell, and again, we've got a pretty good coverage in the industrial areas that are there. Talking about the Station 4 site, this is a map that it's a computer model of where you would see that antenna structure, that monopole throughout town. So anything in yellow or red, you're going to see that. That's a lot of area up there. And we superimposed some of the geographics up there so you can get a better idea of what we're looking at there for streets and whatever. So that's the Station 4 area. This is the school area, which is considerably less when it comes to seeing the structure from around town. And that's basically it. I noticed that the first question on Marie's list here is, why hasn't the committee received a line item budget item? Perfect lead-in. We don't have a system to price yet, so we don't have a price. So our initial, or my initial directions was talk to the fire department, talk to the police department. We've really designed this system to the fire department's needs based on many questions that they had from their rank and file. And then come back to the committee. If they okay the infrastructure that we're proposing, then we can get a price itemized to the penny. That's the next step.
Okay, could then I ask you, going to the state system, would that require buying all new portable and mobile phones for fire, police?
It would, even if you were to try to upgrade the system that you have. It's a different technology.
Well, I assume that would be the case, but it would definitely have to be with the state system.
Yes.
By all
Yeah, you can't reuse what you have, if that's what you're thinking.
I thought the Company 4 site was on, we didn't have enough footprint over there.
Well, that's what, I know there was some question about that originally, and I know Ron and I talked about that even earlier today, and it came up that there was enough, then there wasn't enough
Well,
footage there.
And then the Tilcon site, they're saying we couldn't do it because of the blasting. I mean, that's the last two things that I remember.
Tilcon, I have talked to Tilcon, and they don't have an issue. They actually have a separate division that handles these towers. And as for the footprint, that it's really not correct information.
It's not what? Correct?
It's not correct.
Okay.
I have seen that. Again, I've built towers next to houses, literally 50 feet away from the house, when I was with the state. So it's really a fallacy that.
So there's more than enough room at Company 4.
Well, I don't know that there is or isn't, but from an engineering standpoint, we could use Company 4 if we needed to, for our purposes.
And what size tower or antenna are we looking?
160 feet.
160.
Is that because of the state network? Because originally I was hearing 120, now it went up to 160.
I don't know where these numbers come from, to be honest with you. This is engineered numbers that I will stand by.
Paul, I know a lot of this, your maps depended on that tower being built in Branford. When are they looking to complete that?
They're in the process of building it now.
They have a completion date in mind, or?
I have no idea. I know that the foundation was poured and the steel was delivered.
I heard it's within a year from now.
Oh, I think it's even before then, but the state works very slowly. But it would be ready by the time we did this.
So now, on our towers, are we just talking about an antenna, or are we talking about a cell service?
I'm just dealing with public safety.
So we're just dealing with an antenna?
I'm just dealing with, actually 3 antennas.
But just for the town is what you're asking, just for us.
Yeah, if we build something at Company 4 and on Tilcon, the only thing that's going on that is an antenna for us. I mean, we're not looking to lease out cell service to...
Again, these two towers or monopoles would be built by this company, ARX. So they would want to put other people on it. They'd be foolish not to. But the important thing is they will build the site, develop it, build it, permit it, supply a generator, supply a building for the town at both of the locations at no cost to the town.
No. So if what, I just want to recap on what you're saying, Eddie. So they would want to put other people on it, but it would be on our facility. Who would get the
It would be
money?
their facility, and they are giving you the right to use it for free. They maintain it.
Okay.
But the other option is that we build our own without.
You could.
anybody on there. I
Right.
think that has to be understood also.
You
Right.
could, you're probably talking in the magnitude of about $350,000 to a $500,000 a site.
Per site.
Per
If
site.
we wanted to put our own.
And then we have to maintain it too, correct?
That's
Correct.
correct.
Where if you lease it out, they will maintain it.
Correct.
Right, if they do it, we have free use, they put whoever they want on, they get the revenue for it, they take care of all the maintenance.
That's correct. Now, I have talked to them, but it's not my place to negotiate anything with them, and I don't think you're to that point yet. That would
No.
have to be between the town's legal department and the developer to
And they
do
would
that.
pay a lease to the town. So we would get revenue from it.
Well, it doesn't sound like that, maybe Paul doesn't know, would we get free usage and get a lease
Yes.
payment?
Well, from what they told me, for the site up on the north, in Northford, they would pay you, what, $1,500 a month?
It was 1,200.
Yeah, 12.
It was
12.
1,200 in the
Well,
contract.
okay,
Well, that can always be squeezed, too.
right, okay. So we'd get a lease payment of 12 or 15
Right.
a month, and they would still contain and pay for all the maintenance.
No, that's not what the original contract said. It said the town would have to do the maintenance
On what?
on the tower.
No, they
No?
wouldn't. They
That's
wouldn't.
what-
They wouldn't
No,
want
that
us
was-
to it. They want us to keep our hands off.
Right, I was
Well,
gonna say,
it
if
was
they
in the
own it-
original contract.
Maybe.
Typically, what I've seen in the contracts is that you are responsible for your own maintenance on your equipment, including antennas and the transmission line. So that could be,
That's probably what I saw there.
right, and that you are responsible for that. It's
Right.
like changing the oil in your
Yeah,
car.
but they would be responsible for the. rest,
structure.
The structure and the, okay. Okay.
So on the site for the ambulance company 4 site, I think I can go internally and ask if I think there's some additional information we're going to need for that site, with talking with the planner and looking at the
There is.
setbacks or if we're evaluating that site, maybe, like David said, maybe it's too tight, but potentially there's property, and I don't know, maybe the chief knows, is there property around?
Yeah, how much
Is it
property
required
is-
If we needed a setback or other additional, I'm wondering if somebody could carve out, a quarter acre or something off of there.
You could, I was looking at it today, Paul, and you could probably carve out an area for an outbuilding
Mhm.
with the tower. It has a generator now. It has fiber in the building.
How big's that footprint, chief?
There is town property in the back.
Right.
The whole site is town property.
Is town property,
So
right.
there's property that is not used by us on the back side of the building that
Right.
potentially has a real estate.
Yeah.
Paul, from an engineering standpoint, is there a difference between the ambulance station and the other, what you call the ARX site?
For our purposes, it's very close. There is a little bit of a difference, but as a trade-off as to whether or not we can build it or not, it's a good trade-off. I think the biggest thing is the visibility on it is a lot greater. Does that answer your question?
What's the maintenance cost if you own the pole yourself? Approximate ballpark. On a brand new pole.
You know, it escalates as time goes on. Obviously, the older it is, the more maintenance it takes. Really, it's the management that's more important than the maintenance itself, because the management takes care of the maintenance. As an example, if Verizon comes along and wants to put antennas on that pole, they have to do an engineering study and a structural analysis and file with the siting council. There's an RF analysis that has to be done on it to make sure it's within legal limits. So if the pole needs upgrading at that point, it would get upgraded by the carrier, not by the owner.
I guess maybe my question should have been, what's the lifespan of a monopole?
40 years, 30 to 40 years, we'll all be retired again.
Yeah. So, with that being said, do you see, in your opinion or your professionalism, a lot of people doing their own, towns, municipalities, putting their own in versus at a carrier's expense? You're saying it's about $350 to $500 per site.
Correct.
Do you see municipalities doing their own as we're moving down this path?
Municipalities are not in the antenna structure business. They're in government. I tell municipalities that if somebody wants to build a tower in town, whether or not you think you need it, you put in there that you'll allow it, but you must have free use of that tower. And I think that's the win-win. It's a commercial venture. The town isn't a commercial venture.
Well, let me ask you this then, because we had heard that you're calling it the ARX site?
Yes.
The one behind the school?
That's up at the school.
Yeah, we had heard that a private landowner that's either abuts against that or is back in that area is going to be putting up one on their property or is looking to put one up on their property. If that's found to be true, can the town, if it's on private property like that, through the approval process, can the town approve it through planning and zoning or whatever it has to go through, but say that that we have to be able to have use of it? How does that work?
If it's a commercial venture, yes.
So even if it's on private property, if it's a commercial
That's
venture,
correct.
and there's going to be Verizon and everybody else on it, then we have the ability to do that.
Correct. Actually, in order for those to be allowed by the state of Connecticut, the siting council has to approve that as a commercial venture. So if the town were to do their own thing at Station 4, they could just build it and they don't have to go to the siting council. If somebody came along and wanted to put, say, Verizon or AT&T wanted to put antennas on it, they'd have to go to the siting council and jump through all the hoops. As a municipality, you don't have to do that. On a commercial venture on private property, the siting council, at the town's request, will put in the permitting process that, yes, they approve the construction, but the town gets free use of it.
Do you know? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do you know what I'm referring to? Have you heard that as well?
I have not.
Who brought that up, Mike?
I've heard it, yeah.
You've heard it too, right?
In the, yeah, on the top of the hill, right on.
I mean, if that's the case and it's going to go up anyhow,
Right.
that kind of seems like a no-brainer, man. Can we have somebody look into that and verify it?
I can try, yeah. I'll reach out.
I mean, because and I was just gonna ask you and Marie, at the council level, was it decided again not to put a tower or an antenna structure
Yes.
at the school?
The school is done.
Right.
That's twice that it was brought
Right.
up. Twice it got shot down,
Right.
so it is done.
Okay,
The school site is done.
right.
I mean, my personal opinion, everybody's asking, I think if you go down and answer all Marie's questions here, I think
Yeah.
it'll probably answer about 90% of the questions that we have.
Right, yeah. there's-
So, I
Okay.
mean, a lot of her questions are questions that we're gonna ask.
We're gonna
anyway,
ask it,
so-
right, a lot of this is just,
Read them off and I'll answer them.
what's that?
I said, read them off and I'll answer them. I think we answered the first one, right?
Yeah, we
Yes.
answered the first one.
Okay.
You wanna read?
Okay, if we go to a state system, what are the ongoing costs for the town in terms of, I think you kind of
You
answered that
one
already.
as well.
Actually, let me just go a little deeper into that. The ongoing cost of the town is just for those two sites that the town builds, from an infrastructure standpoint.
Well, there's also those maintenance fees, Paul. I think-
Well, it's all based on those two sites.
And we don't know what that's going to be.
No, but that'll be in the final number that they give us. So at that point,
So is it ARX that would be putting up either whether it's at Company 4 or if it were at the school site?
ARX, I don't know if at Company 4 ARX would be able to use that site or not. I'm assuming that they would. I believe that they would, but I don't do the engineering for the carriers, so I'm not sure. I know that there's something needed at that end of town, so one way or another, somebody's going to build something
Right.
up there. And I would really suggest that the town get out in front of this now and control it a little bit rather than let the siting council dictate it. Because once a public need is shown to the siting council, the town loses control. They have no
We won't have
say.
any jurisdiction or say over it?
None.
Really? So we need to get out in front of where we want to essentially,
Correct.
So is it the plan on the part of the state to do this throughout the entire state? Make sure that everybody's on a state system?
No. It's just those who have a need that want to do it. To give you an idea, out of the 10 or 12 projects that I've done in the past couple of years, only 2 of them I've recommended go on the state system. So it's not for everybody, just,
Right.
You think there's any other option for us other than the state system?
Well, those are kind of
Yeah,
later
that's kind
on.
of-
Those are on these other questions.
you want to do them in order, or you want to just jump? Well, we'll jump around.
Yeah.
There's always options for everything if you throw enough money at it. I think that the solution is a public safety grade system that is, there's no equal to it. It far surpasses anything that's available out there in most states. Could you upgrade what you presently have? It's very hard. The police department is in a better shape than the fire department. The fire department's frequencies are becoming more and more problematic when it comes to man-made noise. Even phone chargers that you plug into the wall interfere with that frequency now. And it's not a constant problem. It comes and it goes, so it's like an elusive type problem. If we could have found another UHF frequency, which is the same frequency band that the police department is on, you'd really have to find 2. It was worth looking at, but they just aren't available.
right, it's nearly impossible to find another frequency.
Not nearly, it is.
Yeah. Or
Never
it's-
say never, but.
Or it's on cost, the cost factor's absorbent.
Well, they have to be available. They have to be able to be licensed by the FCC, and
There's just nothing.
there are none.
So, did that answer your question, Ed, to some degree? Because I'm a little.
Yeah, I just want to know if there's any other options. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Well, we had talked about all those options originally when we talked about this, and the committee decided to go on the state system.
Yeah, I think we did talk about it, but it was so long ago, I think
Yeah.
Eddie and I.
I mean, the only thing that's stopping, because there's no definite, like, for the next 4 years or 5 years, we're on the state system, it's X amount of dollars, but then when they renegotiate in 5 years from now,
No, it's 30 years.
Yeah.
so the price they give us now that it's gonna cost us for 30 years.
The state isn't giving you any price. This is the state contract price from Motorola to buy your share in the system. So what does that involve? That involves what we call the infrastructure, which are the 2 sites,
Yeah.
and what we call subscribers, mobiles and portables. Your maintenance costs for this type of system, whether it was a private system or the state system, is comparable. So it's really a wash when it comes to that.
Now, is the maintenance one I'm talking about, that's good for 5 years, and then they look at it again in 5 years, and it,
What I usually do is I try to ask for Motorola for a minimum of 6 years, because that seems to be the discount break point at 6 years. And I suppose now's a good time, we haven't talked about this, but if you remember in the report, we talked about life cycle of equipment.
Right.
So life cycle basically on the state system is a little bit more involved than on a private system, but basically life cycle means that you pay more upfront on a yearly basis, but your system is never obsolete until it reaches many,
Right.
many years out.
Right, you had said through that system, they will do continual upgrades.
Correct.
They could do maintenance.
You get major upgrades every 2 years, minor upgrades every year, emergency upgrades and firmware and software. when necessary. So basically, keep in mind that a radio system now is a computer with an RF deck on it. So there's a lot of firmware and software involved in it. When we talk about life cycle, a good example is the police department and their consoles that they have now. They have consoles that are obsolete. If, you know, when they went from Windows 7 to Windows 10, the machines that they're riding on aren't made anymore. The firmware, the operating system isn't supported.
Right.
If that happened today and you were under the life cycle contract, Motorola would come in and change the servers, the
Right.
switches, the computers, the operating system. You've already paid for that on an ongoing basis. There's no additional
Right,
charge.
there's no additional cost.
None whatsoever. So that really, from a municipal standpoint, is a win-win situation because you can budget for it as a line item every year.
I know there was, I mean, on the council level, I know there was a question about the maintenance fee. Remember when somebody brought it up, they were asking about the 5 years and then what can happen after 5 years? Could they double it? Could they triple it?
It goes up every year. That's the life cycle maintenance costs.
Right.
They go up every year. I mean, we can tell Motorola we want a minimum of 6 years, but we want a price out for 10 and see if they'll give it to us.
So it's a minimum of 6 you're asking.
Well, I asked for
You
a
asked
minimum of 6 because I know where their sweet spot is for pricing.
Right, so after 6, it could.
You'd have to renegotiate.
You gotta
it,
renegotiate. So
But
that's-
it's a formula that they use. They don't come along and say, well, you know, we have to make up money for this.
So if we did that, would we know what the escalators would be after 6, after 12, after?
Well, it'd probably be another 6-year contract or something like that after that.
Well, it's done yearly. It's
Is it
done
yearly?
yearly. I get the pricing for 6 years, but it's
Right.
done year. So they'll give us the pricing for 6 years, but we pay for it yearly.
Right, but after
Right.
6,
But after 6, would you get another 6-year
It's a
contract with
yearly-
everybody?
It's a yearly thing.
So you have to renegotiate every year?
no, after,
Oh, you're saying after our 6 years is up, do we get another 6 years? Or
You can ask them for it. I don't know if you would get it or not.
right, so it's basically 6 years. Every year it's going to go up, but we're going to be in that 6-year plan. But after 6 years, it sounds like we have to renegotiate, and it goes on another 6-year plan. And then in 12 years, we do another 6-year plan.
If you can do that, if they're agreeable to that. Typically, I'll tell you, typically we get 6-year pricing, and most municipalities just buy 1 year or 2 years, and that's it. And this is after the warranty period, so you're really talking 7 years.
So what have you seen, or have you seen in 6 years for a municipality, or what has it increased?
8 to 10% a year.
8 to 10% a year.
But I think we talked about that last meeting, and when you compared it to us having to maintain our own, even like what we even just maintaining our own system that we have now, it was really a wash.
It really is. It's, you know, if you're paying $40,000 a year now, it's probably going to be $130,000 a year. It's just the nature of the beast. I know it's a sticker shock, really, but don't forget, you're not spending any more money on that radio system at that point because you've got these guaranteed upgrades. So over the course of 15 to 20 years, you're buying that system over again, but you have the luxury of a system that is at the newest release every 2 years.
So it's not hard to say we could pay $130,000 a year as a line item, right?
Yep.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
East Haven, I heard, went to a digital system. I hear it works very well. What is that something that we should be looking at in lieu of?
This is a digital
This
system.
is a totally digital system.
This is a totally digital
Are
system.
they on the state plan?
They are not.
They are not.
North Haven, I did North Haven a couple years ago. They are on their own system, but they had their own frequencies that we could upgrade.
Right. That's the difference if you have your own.
You can only upgrade UHF. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can only upgrade UHF to digital, not VHF.
No, you can do VHF also,
You can?
but you have to have the frequencies available and the density of To cover on, well, to give you an idea, you're talking 2 sites here on 800 to do the town, in addition to what the state already has out there. You've got 5 sites on VHF and UHF to cover the town now, and it's not covering the town. So it requires more density of base stations.
Let's read the rest of the questions. Let's, that's something to think about here. Number 3, Marie.
We did 3, I think.
Yep.
We did 3, I'm sorry. Number 4.
So,
We move into a state system, can we use the 3 antenna sites we currently have?
You actually have more than 3
We have more
antenna
than-
sites.
right.
how many?
You have more than 3.
Okay, then I have that wrong.
But the bottom line is, this is an engineered system based on coverage, not based on availability of, oh, let's try this, and, which is basically what you've got now.
So then, number 5, if we go to the state system, are we taking all our equipment off of Parsonage Hill? We don't need that?
That is correct. So you don't have that monthly cost either.
So then my next question is, then why do we just put fiber on Parsonage Hill if we think we're going to the state system? I guess I'm confused by that.
That's not a question for me.
I could answer
Yeah, I
that.
was gonna say.
That was actually approved by the town council.
Right, I know that. I'm just trying to get
Well,
all lined
the
up.
problem is we have these deteriorating copper lines, the T1 lines,
Right.
okay? And it's definitely hindering I know for a fact it's hindering the fire department's frequencies. When the copper fails, it's almost like you have an open mic, so it makes it difficult for them to communicate. Is that correct, Phil?
I was never told that.
Huh?
I was never told
That's
that.
my understanding. I hear like an open mic all the time on the fire department thing, so it makes it difficult for them
The
to.
tactical said that was Frontier working on the fiber lines.
There's no fiber lines there, there's T1s. So, that's what I was told by
That was the
them.
excuse they
You're
gave us.
not operating?
I was,
Well-
Marie, I was under the understanding that it was basically just to bridge the gap.
No, I know, I'm just trying to put all
It
the
is
pieces
pretty
together.
much just that.
Yeah.
It's just a temporary for us to get through what the constraints that we're having now.
I realize that, and I knew there was a
Yeah.
problem, I remember hearing it, but I'm trying to put it all
Yeah.
together and understand.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
Okay, and I think you answered 7, so we would have to get all new portable and mobile radios,
Either way.
either way.
And they're the same price either way.
Okay. And that obviously must be a major cost.
It is. And that's because of the digital radios.
Although we are still good with the ones from the fire department, correct?
Correct. With upgrades,
Right.
software upgrades.
Good software upgrades, right?
Okay, so then, number 8, what are the other options other than going to the state
Okay, we
system?
talked about that with getting a couple more
Yeah,
UHF
that's
channels.
that's the only answer then.
That's correct.
Or, I mean, essentially, not that we were gonna do this, or essentially, we stay the way we are, do a state system, if you could not get any more UHF.
On the fire side, and on the police side, but more so on the fire side, you would need more transmission sites to get the coverage, the equivalent coverage.
For the fire department,
Again, we're talking building penetration, not street level.
right, on the fire department side.
Yeah.
So what does that entail, getting the transmission site?
Right.
You'd have to put up, it might involve putting up a tower.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. All the sites that you have now are either owned by Crown Castle or SBA, and you're up there, I think for the most part, for free on them.
How many antennas do we have if we have more than 3?
I thought we only had 3, I don't know.
Well,
Or how many sites?
how many sites? You have receive sites also. You have Evergreen Woods, you have the high school, or the intermediate school, I forget which one.
Yeah.
And 4 RF sites, not just 3, 4.
4.
So there's 4. I guess you kind of answered number 9, that the state system is a digital system.
Yes.
The height of the antenna at the new police station, does that help in any way?
We did look at that. I can bring up the slide if you want. It's kind of hard to see on that screen. We looked at putting something on the hill in back of the police station And I even thought of, well, you've got a good relationship with Tilcon, maybe they'll give you a piece of property up
Higher.
just past where yours ends.
Right.
And it turns out that site down into Tilcon's by their main plant is much better suited
Even then.
than the police,
Okay.
the new police station. Again, this is all about physics.
Right.
Okay, my next question has to do with the fact that I remember hearing a couple years ago that there were some policemen in the ice rink, and they couldn't get out with their radios to get to dispatch. And I asked some people that I know that used to do this kind of business, and it's because it's a metal building,
Correct.
and that causes the problem. Then I was told there is something, and again, I'm a little bit of a novice in this, but I'm trying to learn. If you put an amplifier into that building, that would help. In other words, are there other things that you could do to buildings
To enhance.
or my understanding are repeaters, that would enhance without having to go to a totally new system?
There are. Bottom line.
Okay. So what does an amplifier cost, for example?
I've done some that cost $60,000, $70,000.
Okay.
In a building like Honeywell, you're probably talking at least that much. In a building like the ice arena, it's wide open. It wouldn't be that much.
So each facility.
Each facility has its own design, and those systems are not without their fallbacks also.
Do you put those in or on the structures?
Inside and outside. So you have an antenna that you put outside, if you can get a strong enough signal, and then you distribute the amplified signal inside.
Would that outside antenna be attached to the building?
Yes.
So the only problem I would have with that, and I'd be interested to hear from the fire chief, is if you have a fire or something at that building, and those antennas are attached to that building or in that building, there's
And they go
a pretty
down.
good chance that they're gonna go down if it's a good enough fire, no?
That's not a concern for us. There's an antenna on this building.
That's not a concern for you.
If the antenna was on that structure.
Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, they're not big antennas.
I think what he's saying,
No.
what he's asking is, well, if there's a fire inside the building,
Yeah.
will the inside amplifiers get destroyed and make it unusable?
Right, is that going
If
to?
the, if the whole point of having them is for the firefighters inside the structure,
But if there's a significant enough fire in the building,
You're
you're
not in
not
it.
going to be in there. We're talking from the street level.
Okay.
So
Do
That's fine.
people do those?
they're actually now, since 2018, the Connecticut state statute requires them for all new or major reconstruction of buildings. So if you've got a building that's being built today, I keep using Honeywell as an example because I was actually up there today looking at it to see where it was with regards to antennas. If they were to do a major overhaul on that building, part of the permitting process is they have to show 95% coverage of that building in critical areas. And what you and I used to think of as critical areas are not what they're talking about. They're talking about areas of egress in front of the alarm panel, in front of the sprinkler valves. And that's all, it's part of NFPA recommendations, but it's been adopted by the state of Connecticut as statute as 2018.
Our fire marshal is on that during every plan review.
This might be stupid. Is there something that we could put in our apparatus that would boost our signal at that location?
You can put vehicle repeaters in, but it's only a last-ditch effort that we like to use. We like to design the system around working in its natural form rather than try to augment it. Problem is, if you have multiple units responding, there's a chance for interference. Yes, they can be locked out, but they're not foolproof. And they don't give you the guaranteed coverage. Yeah, it gives you upfront coverage, but how far into the building does it cover?
And are these antennas or amplifiers engineered for the
Yes.
structure?
Yes.
And who pays for them?
Typically the building owner. I would anticipate that, after we design all this, if we still have a problem in Honeywell, that you would go to Honeywell and say, hey,
Right.
but the system is going to, it's definitely going to work better than it does today in Honeywell. And if they were to try to put a system in today that would cover their building on your present system, it would be more expensive than putting it in if you were on the state system because of the amount of the signal that penetrates the building. And you're right, they are engineered.
Yeah.
They say, well, we don't need it in the front half, but we
Right.
need it in the back half.
So
or
to
we
an
need
owner,
it
to
in
a
the
business
stairwell.
owner or a building owner, it's a substantial cost potentially. Yeah.
But if we were to go to a place like the ice rink now and say you need to put one in, wouldn't we have to pay for it? You don't know.
Well, it sounds like if,
I deal with physics.
yeah. There's a question, is there any advantage for the police department going on to an 800 frequency than going digital on their UHF frequency?
Mutual aid, both police and fire. Plus resources the state offers that you don't have access to now at no cost.
That was an outside question that came into
Yeah.
us.
That's fine.
Yeah.
To give you an example, they have a county hotline. You don't need that anymore in the new system because the state supplies that as part of what they, when the console
When the
hook to their
console-
system.
Again, as I'm trying to learn,
Mm-hmm.
can we improve the current system by having more repeaters in areas where there's a problem?
Yeah, we talked about that. We could, well, when you say repeaters, you mean vehicle, in-building repeaters or more antenna sites? It would
Either
require
one,
more
either or.
antenna. It would
Either or.
require more antenna sites. The areas are too vast to put just amplifiers in buildings to try to cover that
Right,
issue.
so you
You
need a
still need
repeater.
an
Right.
Yes.
antenna or a repeater, either
Yes.
way.
I guess we've kind of taken care of 13. You're not, no matter what we do, if we went with our own system or we went with the state, we don't, you don't know what the cost would be right now.
Not until we go to Motorola and say, okay, this is the constellation that we're doing, and give us a price on that, which includes if we build our own towers or if we give them a structure that's already built, that affects the price.
And then my understanding is the best way to go is microwave, but we can't do that because of the topography of North Branford. Is that correct? You don't have the point-to-point.
Incorrect. A qualified incorrect, let's put it that way. Don't forget now, we can go from point A to point B. It doesn't have to be within the town because we have the state infrastructure that we can connect to. So we can go from Tilcon up to Durham or down to Branford. Quite honestly, I would recommend that you use fiber and you use microwave because it's a public safety system. There's lives at risk here, not only of the first responders, but of the taxpayers in town. So we have a monitored system that says the microwave's down, switch to fiber, or the fiber's down, switch to microwave. Public safety, you have to have a reasonable expectation that that message is going to be delivered the first time.
So, again, I don't understand. I thought there were spots here that we could not use microwave because of the topography.
There are many options for microwave. I would be surprised if you couldn't. That's part of what we would do with
So
when
part of the
Motorola
state
comes
system would
back.
have that.
Yes,
We got microwave and fiber. Or
I would recommend that.
recommend that.
That's if we go to the state system and
Right.
use their towers. We can't do microwave on our own.
That's what I'm assuming. right?
Yeah, no,
If, let's say a town isn't in the state system, do they still have the opportunity to use like a tower with the state if
Yes.
they had to?
Many municipalities do that.
So
If they're lucky enough to have one in their town.
Right, I was gonna say.
So, like, right now, North Branford, are we able to use the one that's in Durham for anything? Is that ever possible? No.
No, we looked at that. That was one of the tower sites that we looked at to,
Now, do you know if the town of Branford is on the state? No, they're not.
They're not.
no, they're not. Their consoles are tied to the state, but
Now, I understand that, my understanding, I was told that when they had that incident, that shooting incident a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
they, through the state system, they couldn't get the help they needed. They had to use New Haven.
I have no idea.
You have no idea
That's
about
not
that?
accurate.
That's not, okay.
It's not accurate.
That's not accurate?
No.
Okay.
What do you see as the future holding for your recommendations? I mean, obviously, you know, you deal with state system, you deal with private sector. It's just a question, I'm not asking you to hold you to it, but what do you see? I mean, we've talked about a lot of things over the last year, and unfortunately, I don't know, it still seems, and I don't know, Ron or Eddie, Marie, today, we're no further than we were several months ago, it feels. We don't know the cost factor until, or how long will it take to get a cost factor, and what is your opinion on a recommendation for us?
Well, I stand by my initial recommendation, which is to go on the state system. I'm here today to say I've addressed the concerns of the police and fire department, and that we have a viable constellation here and system, and I'd like to go and have the town, have Motorola proceed and come up with pricing
Come up
for
with a
it.
number. How long will that take?
Who knows with Motorola? 4 to 8 weeks.
Oh,
Who
okay,
knows?
so I was gonna say, it's not
No.
gonna be more than 3 months.
No, this is many, many hours of work to
Yeah.
get to this point. The rest is a salesman's thing to do.
Right.
But there is still the big question about that other tower, whether it can go on a Company 4, right? That's still a question.
Correct.
I mean, I think Company 4 is our only option, correct?
Well, no, I mean, I think, right here, Paul, right, Northford has to have a tower.
Correct.
Correct.
It's either Company 4 site, or it's this private site. That's the way I get it, that's why, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the private
Yeah, I
site.
didn't-
And
I don't
I
know.
think that's, you know, I think that will cause a lot of problems. I think I know where that is, and it's almost in the same spot where the town property is. And my understanding, it would have to go, as you said, it goes to the siting council. That could take years, right, before it could get approved?
For who?
For a private
Private.
person?
Yes. Well, it wouldn't take years, but it's probably an 18-month process.
So, it's a couple of years out either way.
Yeah.
The other thing, I just wanted to throw it out there, not to make things more complicated than they already are, but I talked to Dave earlier today, and I was just, because we weren't, the council wasn't in favor of putting it behind the school, the tower, I was just racking my brain for other ideas. There is a piece of property, it's privately owned right now, it's the old Amato's. It's a restaurant that burnt down. It's kind of right behind Company 4, sort of on Forest Road. There's,
It's on the corner of Forest and
Yeah,
Kentucky.
we'd have to plug it into the computer and have them do the maps.
It's low. It's a low-lying
It's a low-
site,
low
but I
site.
don't
Yeah,
know.
no, we need the height for that area.
Yeah, that was almost.
Just out of curiosity, what's the issue with going up to the school?
You're looking at her.
and the fact that it's a school.
Okay.
There's multiple
Well,
facts.
you know, from an RF standpoint, it's really a non-issue. I've done antennas at school. North Haven, we put it on top of a grade school.
Well, I was gonna say, that's my question, and I think you're already leading into it. What's the repercussions of years to come for these towers and safety and,
There are FCC regulations that cover RF exposure and distance and RF exposure. And the Siting Council is even more stringent than the FCC when it comes to that. So you can't just go ahead as a carrier and throw antennas up and say it's safe. You have to prove it mathematically. You get much more radiation into your head and your eyeballs talking on your cell phone than you would if you were 5 feet underneath the antenna on a tower. The fact that it's up over 100 feet, there's very little radiation.
But let me ask you this. I've heard that, you know, we're at 5G now, but it's not going to be long before we're going to be all the way up to a 10G. Would you agree that that's coming And we really don't know how that's going to affect.
You know, by the time that happens, they'll probably have enough satellites up that all towers will be obsolete.
Be obsolete,
I just
right.
can't get out the crystal ball for that one.
Yeah.
But again, the difference in 3G, 4G, 5G really has nothing to do with the radiation.
Huh. Okay. That's interesting. So what is 3G versus 5G?
Speed.
Speed, that's it.
It doesn't, and it's nothing to do with with radio.
No, it's additional bandwidth, it's frequencies, but the radiation doesn't change. From a physics standpoint, in other words, if the standard says you will not irradiate past this level, that's it.
I have another question. If I put a tower up at 160 feet, does it have to be 160 feet away from any residence in
No.
case it falls? It doesn't?
No. That's a local ordinance, if there is an ordinance.
Because I think that's what we were hearing
Well-
about the ambulance company. We didn't have a room in case, God forbid, that tower fell. But that's a local
That's
ordinance.
that's a local ordinance? That's interesting.
I think they're more concerned about the ice falling off of it in the wintertime and having a certain amount of space around it for that, correct?
But it doesn't have to be the height of the tower.
No, I know. What is that, though? Like how, not sure.
It's part of the design. You know, when it comes to ice, that's a whole different theory. I mean, I have seen structures right next to existing buildings. They were put up like 10 feet away. And then plates were put on the roof to stop the ice from penetrating the roof if it falls.
You're saying next to buildings. How about homes, people's homes?
That's what he said.
You're saying homes?
Homes. Well, he's putting towers or antennas up next to homes.
We did one in Ledyard that was literally 35, 40 feet away from somebody's bedroom window.
That house went for dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Not in today's market.
Yeah.
Paul, that telecom site, was that being spec'd out for cell phones as well? Carriers, different carriers?
I can only assume that it was because ARX is Tilcon's preferred vendor to do that, and he's not going to do it for free.
So they would negotiate, there would be no public benefit to the town other than using the tower because of Telcom's property, so they're not going to see the financial.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. There's actually an existing tower up there already.
Right, I think I was just going to ask a similar question. So if you were to put a tower up or an antenna structure on private property, whether it's Tilcon or it's whoever, the only benefit the town's going to get is free use of that, right?
Unless the town wanted to get into the RF real estate business.
Right. So they would get use of it. The landowner would get a stipend every month, and the antenna company could do whatever they want, putting whoever they want.
Well, it's all how it's negotiated,
Yeah.
but that's a viable thought.
Just out of curiosity, when you spec'd out the antenna behind the school, how far away from the school was it?
It was actually a spot that ARX had picked. It was substantially, from an RF standpoint, away from the school and a fall zone from the school. But I honestly don't know exactly where, other than I was given coordinates and I plotted it on a map.
So besides, who is it? What's the company?
ARX.
ARX.
Yeah, oh, it's not up there, yeah,
Um,
ARX.
What other companies are out there besides them that are in this?
Not many. I was surprised that this guy was still around, to be honest with you. All of us were in that business at one point in our careers, and
Yeah.
I got out of mine.
So they're the only game in town?
I don't know that they're
No,
only
there's
game in
somebody
town,
lives
but
in North
the only
Branford.
game that seems to have an in, especially with Tilcon. You know, the carriers used to build a tower and then turn it over to the property owner for rent to pay.
Right.
They don't do that anymore. They want somebody to build it for them.
Yeah.
You know, Crown Castle might build one. Blue Sky Towers may build one. They've been known to do that, but typically they like to take over a revenue stream.
The tower at Parsonage Hill, is that just an old tower and it would need a lot of upgrading? Is
There's
that-
3 old towers up there.
It's what?
There's
Three.
3 old
Three old.
towers up there that have not been maintained to a standard that the new poles would be maintained to.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Doesn't he have to keep up to certain standards?
Doesn't he have other carriers on there that I would?
Not on the 2 big towers that I know of. There's some amateur radio equipment up there, but I don't know about anything else. You know, I only paid attention to the town stuff when I was up there. I know that there is what we call a self-supporting tower up there that has carriers on it.
That's the one that's in the best shape?
The big one.
It's
I don't know, I didn't look at that one at all,
Okay.
because you didn't have any equipment on that. And when I did look at them, I only paid attention really to the biggest one, because we knew we were going to vacate the other one that we were on. But as it turns out, the Tilcon site for the trunk radio system really gives us the best coverage.
So even if we stayed on that tower, we still have a coverage issue in Northford.
Yes. And you have somewhat of a coverage issue in the
Yeah.
southeast portion of town.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Here's my only concern. Mike, you could attest to this. Budget time. When budget time comes, everybody sits down with the town manager, and, I mean, it's not in our budget, thank God, but now you gotta realize the $130,000 every year, you can't cut that.
I can
Yeah,
address
I
that a
mean-
little.
Well, that would be like another contractual type of thing.
Right.
That wouldn't,
That'd be a line item
Like
that's
how much
on.
you always want $5,000.
Motorola will allow you.
no, that's different.
That'd be it.
That's a lock.
Yeah, that's.
But I mean, you gotta realize that every year it's
Yeah, it's like doing
$130,000.
debt service or pension funding, it's something you gotta.
Go ahead, Paul, you have.
If you don't have a funding stream, Motorola will allow you to drop out of that agreement.
If
So,
we- say
you know,
that
in
again?
year 4, you don't have the money because things are really tight and inflation's gone crazy. If they give you this in writing, they will allow you to cancel that.
Really?
The problem is,
Yeah.
they're going to get it sooner or later
Yeah.
because again, these are computers. How many times in the last 10 years have you gotten a new computer? I'm sure the town has some kind of life cycle on their computers too. It's the same exact thing. Pay me now or pay me later.
Yeah. So, with Motorola, we locked in for 6 years at 130,000, argumentatively.
A year.
130 a year.
You know, it could be 90, it could be higher.
Yeah.
You know, until they come back with the number.
And then in that 5th year going into the 6th, 90 days or 6 months prior, you renegotiate, and it goes up 8 to 10%. So it goes up another 10. And these are just numbers. If
Right.
it's 130, it's going to go up another $13,000 in year 7.
These are really all things that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure everybody
Oh,
understands.
okay.
It's been a long
All right.
time since we've actually sat down. A lot of this was on Zoom.
Yeah.
So you lose a little bit.
That's why I came here in person.
No, I
today.
appreciate
was
it
time.
because I think there was a lot of unanswered questions, and I still think by looking around the room, we're a little dumbfounded, and I'm speaking on certainly not on the whole group, but certainly thinking that we have a lot to
I
discuss.
mean, I remember talking about like a fee that we had to pay her, but I don't ever remember it being that high.
Well, you know,
And like you said, it might not be
I
that
may be
high.
high, but I don't want you to come back to me
Yeah.
and say, you said 90 and
And
it's
it's 130.
130.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I mean, there's nothing I could hold, but I mean, I always thought maybe it was gonna be like $5,000 or $6,000 a year or something, you know what I mean?
I think that the most pressing thing right now is, you know, do you stand by going on the state system? And if you do, we should get a price from Motorola.
Yeah, I definitely
and
think.
address all these concerns.
Yeah.
But that being said, who's building the towers and where are they being built? Because that's $500,000 to $600-something thousand right there.
So we need to know that before we get a price.
They're going to want to know what they're putting the antennas on, yes. So that's really, if the first decision holds, the second decision is, where are we putting these towers and who's building them? I think the
So-
Tilcon one is a no-brainer, I think.
Well, Tilcon, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
has to be, because I think we have to act on that sooner than later.
I wish, though,
And
that
then-
we could make a comparison, and we had a price as well for if we had to put some amplifiers in buildings and some extra repeaters, and see what that looks like, too. I think that would be
That would
helpful,
be
I think,
near
to see.
impossible.
It's
Yeah,
impossible?
so,
Well,
could
correct me if
we,
I'm wrong, but even if you put the amplifiers up, you still gotta replace all the outdated.
Yes, you
equipment.
still
Right,
have to
you
do
still
all
have to
the
do the
existing
outdated equipment.
infrastructure.
Marie, I like how you're thinking, trying to save money and be rational about it, but I think that's like putting a Band-Aid on a.
Okay, but then I have a problem not having I don't understand why the town council isn't screaming. You're talking about $5 million, but no one has ever showed us exactly what's included in $5 million. Showed us a line
Because we
item
don't know
budget.
yet. We haven't determined what the system, what the foundation of the system is going to look like. Once we know what the foundation of the system is going to look like, then they can say, okay, this is what we're building the system to, and then now, this is all my understanding, and now they can start putting numbers to that. They can't put numbers to it until they know
No, right.
where the towers are going to go and, what other supplemental things might be needed.
so could we run, while we have a couple of council members in the committee here, and actually, before I even say this, we have the three chiefs here. Do you guys have anything to add before I say my next question?
Don't know what you're gonna say, so.
Well, do you have anything you want to add to this as far as your thoughts? State system? Chief?
I think there's, and Paul is 110% accurate in saying, first of all, you need to decide where the tower's gonna go.
Right.
Right? That's absolutely your first step up there. And to keep them as emergency communication towers. I think once you start, and my own personal opinion, you're the minority up there right now, but as soon as you start mentioning cell on the tower, I think you're gonna have a problem with those other 6 people ultimately that are gonna say, put the stamp on it and say yes, or put the other stamp on it that's gonna say, we're not going in that direction. I think that is a battle that lies ahead.
Well, so my question would be, and where I'm going with this is, if we have to make a decision to get a number, we make a tentative motion to put a tower at the ambulance company number 4, if it's viable, and Tilcon, and start there. So we can get a number from Motorola in 8 to 10 weeks.
Yeah, I like that, Dave, but from what the chief just said, I think there's a nuance, right? So if we're into the state system and the proposal and the recommendation is Tilcon works for us, you need 2 towers,
We
right?
need 2.
You need a Tilcon, right, which seems like a no-brainer, okay, great, and you need somewhere northward.
Mm-hmm.
The chief's saying, radio communications, public safety versus a cell tower. Cell tower, you can get a developer to potentially develop it, right? And the cost. If we're not going cell tower and it's just public safety, you're going to put up 2 towers at $350 each.
Well, the Tilcon
Right.
won't cost you.
Yeah.
The Tilcon one would still be done by ARX,
Right.
but would he do the Tilcon one on spec? That's a negotiation the town has to have with ARX. I'm not really part of that. I
Right.
can help you with it, but, is he willing to build the one at Tilcon if we
Give them the one
don't
at
let
the
him
end.
have the one up in Northford? I can
Or-
tell you that sooner or later, something's going to be built up in the Northford area.
So is it feasible for us to say that we're gonna put our own tower up at the ambulance company for whatever that number might be?
Well, we can have Motorola give us a price on it.
Yeah, but don't forget, if we just put, then we maintain.
Yeah.
Do we know right now 100% that it's feasible to put a tower? We keep talking about putting a tower on the ambulance property. Do we know 100% right now that it's feasible that one can go there?
I don't know that.
Well,
I
think
just
we
did
need to
that
start-
from a physics standpoint, and Motorola agreed that, either location would be suitable.
I would think before we moved forward, I would want to know, is that 100%? Because I don't want to start making plans around a tower.
I agree.
That we find
That's
out.
really on the town to decide.
Right.
It's on the town to decide if we could put one there.
Right.
So you did the analysis that a potential for that.
Correct.
For it.
Either site would be acceptable.
So we gotta go, Michael, how do we figure out?
I can go internally, and I think I can do that with the planner, and as long as I've got access to, with respect to understanding what footprint you need, right? And
Right.
what's permissible locally, we have an ordinance on the height and
Yeah.
all that, the buffers and all that.
Right, yeah.
So I can do that, I can chase that down, see if that's viable.
And that would dictate where it would be located.
Well, right, again, and again, is it as a public safety town tower or as a,
I think we
cell
compare.
tower?
I think we compare both.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I think once we know we can build one
Right.
there, let's
Then
have
we can-
Motorola give us a price.
Right.
If we use it just as public safety,
Right.
what's
Or-
that cost look like? Because
or
we have a
do we-
350 to 500 spread according to what we heard tonight.
Or
Could be
do we
less,
have
who
a-
knows? But the other thing too is, I mean, you need to, I think, to be responsible, you need to lay both of them on the table and say, okay, we can choose to spend this much money, and then we own the tower, and then we also own the maintenance of it, whatever that may be
Right.
moving forward. Or we can do a cell tower, we can collect $1,200 a month, and they maintain it. We just have to maintain the line and our antenna that's on it. So,
Yeah,
in
I
order
agree,
to
we
do-
have to have both options in order to make a decision, and that's what I was getting to, and I think, Eddie, you were saying, we would own it, and we'd own the maintenance, but also, as Ron is saying, and I agree, that's what I wanted to finish, is to look at both options to see what is the most viable for the town. Do we just get the $1,200 or $1,500 a month, walk away other than our basic maintenance, or do we own it for public safety, and what's the maintenance on that? Will we be able to get a maintenance cost?
The maintenance over a 30-year period is minimal.
What's
If
minimal?
it's minimal, close to nothing, other than an inspection every 5 years.
Okay.
There's not a lot of changes that are made on it if it's your own and you're just putting your antennas on it.
Okay, so there's minimal
So we'd have
maintenance.
to put a generator there too, though, right?
I think the chief said there's a
Is there
generator already there.
station for it? How big is it?
I couldn't tell you, Ryan, if I gave you a number.
It's about this. this.
200 amp?
At least 20 kW.
Yep.
Is that sufficient?
Maybe not.
So we'd have to be
I
potentially.
usually do a 35.
Okay. But,
That's just for the south tower. Now, we're doing the ambulance building and the cell tower, so we're gonna need something bigger than that, right? You're talking 35 just for the cell tower itself. We're trying to do the ambulance building and the cell tower.
But you know what, the price difference, once you buy a generator between a 25 and a 35, or 20 and a 35, 36 is what I call background noise. It's not a lot. How old is the generator?
2006, 7.
Okay. So we can take a look at it. Gas or propane? Or diesel?
Let's hypothetically say you put a 160-foot tower there. You have a path for microwave?
Yes.
And I just did quick math, just so everybody knows. For 30 years, at $1,200 a month is about $430,000. So over the lifespan of the tower, if we did decide to collect rent, it would be about $430,000 to the town.
So it'd pay for itself in 30 years.
It's $1,200 a month, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you might squeeze 15 on it, like you said, but it would pay for itself in that time frame. And if there's minimal maintenance, I think it's, we have
Key
to
would
look
be
at it and
this,
make a decision as to.
What we could get for revenue if it would pay for our maintenance. Right? Then it's not costing us nothing.
Yeah.
right? If we got 2 towers and we're getting $1,200 a month, that's $2,400 a month per tower.
One tower.
Well, only one.
One
Yeah, there's
tower.
only one tower though.
Tilcon owns the other one.
Tilcon owns their
That's
own.
why I asked that before, because I didn't want that to be.
You're talking about $14,000-15,000 a year.
Yeah, so we're saying, how much is the, oh, we're 130, so, yeah.
Yeah, we're 130, well, even if it's 90,000 a year,
Yeah.
you know.
But that's not just for the one tower. It's for
But that was the old contract, that could change. I saw the old contract was.
Plus,
Yeah,
plus you'll be
nothing
saving,
signed.
plus you'll be saving
Right.
$36,000.
Right, we're at 36K a year now, right? For Oceankowski's.
Or some.
If you're smart, you take some of that money and put it into a fund, so when 40 years comes up, you just pay for the thing without digging into your pocket.
Right, right, if we did it that way.
Yeah, so if you take the rent plus not having to pay the $36,000 now, let's say it's $90,000 or $100,000, now you're talking it's really like $50,000 a year.
Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
paying for the life cycle.
And you get, you know, I think one thing too that's very tough to put a value on here when we're trying to figure out value is the fact that it is constantly maintained and upgraded, and just having that sense of security for fire and police. That,
Yeah, that's a no-brainer, really.
you know what I mean, for $50,000 a year, you know, and like you said, the citizens too, so.
The only thing I guess that I think we all questioned is, you know, if you can't get a 30-year commitment and it's only 6 years, and it's 10%, so it's, you know, at 130, it's 13,000, but essentially, there's no fear to us and no out of pocket when they're doing all their upgrades.
Well, I mean, really,
Right.
we got to actually move the thing forward so we can get numbers.
Yeah, we gotta get, well, that's why I was saying we need to
Say
get,
130 and it might be 90.
right,
it could
no,
be
that's why I'm
60,
saying
it
we
could be
need to go
150.
and get numbers, so.
If we
Michael-
think the system's going to be all right for the fire department, we think the system's going to be all right for the police department, then moving forward.
I think Mike should look and see if we could put the tower there, and if Tilcon can do it, then we get numbers on both, and we meet.
One of these meetings, got to come back with numbers.
Well, I'm saying if Michael can get that number, we can meet again in a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, we can meet back here, get us the, if we can put
Well,
towers
we're not
in.
going to get it, but he said more.
No.
Take 48 weeks.
If Michael can get us, if we can put a tower on company 4, and he says, yes, we can, we tell him to get us numbers on both. Right?
I have a quick question,
Yes, sir.
and that is, so we operate a 3-point assignment cap system now. We operate from Commerce Drive, to Oceankowski's on Parsonage Hill Road, and Reed Scott Road East. We have 2 satellite receivers, one at the high school, or intermediate school complex, and one at 88 Notch Hill Road. Those are receive sites only. So, given the fact that we operate on 3 towers right now, so from the discussion, we're eliminating those 3 towers completely from our current system. We're extracting any equipment that could be there for VHF and UHF communications. Correct? So what's the value of that equipment and what gets done with it? And are we paying to be on those sites now that can help us on the state side?
I can't answer the question as to whether or not you're paying on those sites now. I don't believe that you are. And the cost of the equipment, any resale value or trade-in value is nothing.
So equipment that we put in 2011, 12, there's no value.
It's 10 years old.
It was probably obsolete 5 or 6 years after that.
Right.
Probably someplace in the Midwest that would love it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. You want to, we'll have Michael get us a answer on that, and we can reconvene here in 2 weeks?
Sure.
Just, I don't know who's keeping the minutes or who's been keeping them in. I don't know if Joe was ever on the committee Joe Civitello?
No, I was gonna bring that up because I know.
I mean, I won't be here the next couple of weeks, and
Well,
Yeah.
why don't we tell people what?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe, Ron, you might know, Victor called me and he's stepping off some committees, this is one of them. So I thought as well, I think as you're thinking, maybe if Joe was interested in stepping into his place, Civitello, if you would be kind enough to do that, and maybe get it, I think we have to go through the council anyways, but if we make the recommendation here, you're not stepping off, you're just.
no,
Yeah.
I won't be here for the next 3 weeks. So
Okay.
If you have a meeting within. the only-
Yeah, I mean, we'll have a meeting.
The only one on our committee, as far as I know, was just me and the chief.
Correct, so if Joe would do that, and we have Ron and Marie here that could bring it to the council level, and then Michael, if we can meet in, a couple of weeks, the week of the 12th, or we don't have a building committee meeting, so we can meet the 12th or even the 19th, or the 10th, we have a police commission meeting, we can meet the 11th, 12th, we can figure that out. Is that good with you, Ron?
Yeah, just let me know when it is.
Okay. And you guys will bring it up to the council to put Joe in.
Yeah, Mike, if you can just add that to the agenda. And then if you can just, not only Company 4 too, but I think it's still, just in case something goes wrong with that, if you could just maybe try to get a little more information on that private, this ghost person that's supposedly putting up a tower, so.
Is that new information, Ron, or is that something that, I
It
didn't
could
hear
be,
about it either, but.
it could be,
It's legit, he's
Oh.
been sticking around, and he's a local person, and, yeah, I just don't know where he's at, and, for all I know, he's pursuing going to the state with, now that I'm sure he's monitoring and knows that the council voted the second time not to go with TDES, so.
It's in the same area?
well, what I'm thinking is, even if we're not sure if we're gonna use his tower that he's building, we should still have the siting council, we should still ask the siting council to put something in there that we have the ability to use it if we want to or need to.
Yes, sir.
There's something more here than meets the eye. The siting council isn't going to allow a private entity, that I know of, they may have changed since I dealt with them a few years ago, but the possibility of them allowing somebody to build a tower on spec with no carriers on it just doesn't make sense. They never did it in the past. So
So a private entity can't just put a tower up?
not to say, well, if I build it, they will come.
Right.
Typically, there's a carrier involved, and they go to the siting council and say,
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think,
in which,
carriers all over Northford trying to
right,
build. a
yeah, so like I say,
I will have to
they're gonna
file
build
with
it,
Troops, because I know where
and the siting council will allow it against the town's wishes if it's for the public domain, if there's a need, a proven need.
Yeah, that's.
Did you hear that, Marie?
Hmm?
Can you just repeat that for Marie?
The siting council, if a carrier or an entity can prove a public need, they will allow a tower at XYZ location and go against the town's wishes.
They can overrule the town?
Yes. Town has no jurisdiction.
Really?
Yes.
How about the people, the residents?
Squeaky wheel. I've
So-
seen it go both ways.
Yeah.
But these are also the same people that complain that they don't have cell phone service
Right.
or there's an emergency and.
I'm just wondering, so the residents, wherever this may be in that area,
In general, anywhere.
or anywhere, have an issue, and this goes into litigation, this could go on for a period of,
Siting council has the final say. And there is a set routine that they go through. They will have meetings in town where the town and the taxpayers can express their dismay.
but even at that point, the council could,
if there's a proven need for it.
Okay.
And it could be at the school. Well, no, it wouldn't be at the school because that's town property.
Right.
But it could be on the private property.
Okay.
All right, well, let's
So,
not.
Paul,
Yeah.
the site behind Firelight Honeywell is not a good site?
Doesn't get us into that northeast corner. And it's because it's on the downside of a hill, it blocks. Is that 17 there? Middletown Avenue?
Clinton. I think.
Yeah, it's the other side that it doesn't cover. So, these numbers that we're throwing around for the life cycle cost, they will give us that when they give us the package.
That's what I mean, that's why we gotta get things moving there, so we can get back.
I think we got a good game plan. I think we reconvene
Yeah.
in 2 weeks. And
Yeah, I think
we get a little more information so that we can give everything to Motorola, feel comfortable with that.
Right. So you want to meet the 10th at 4 o'clock, and then we can meet at our police commission meeting after? That work for you guys? Joe? Yep. Yeah, okay. Chief, you guys are good? Then we could do this meeting and our police commission meeting.
Except we have to be an hour, because this
Yeah.
meeting's at 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a fairly quick meeting. We don't need Paul at that meeting. Really?
I can zoom in for questions.
Okay, unless you want to come in person, be even better.
That's a possibility.
Okay. Zooms are old.
You get much more accomplished face-to-face.
You do, I agree. So if you can tentatively put it aside for an hour that day, it'd be great.
Well, at what point, and you'll have to kind of run through the process, at what point do we tell Motorola, this is the expected coverage that we want? Not that we want, this is the expected coverage that we are demanding. And they come out and do the testing, and it doesn't meet our requirement. And I know this cost, doesn't meet our requirement, they're responsible to make up that difference.
If that's negotiated into the contract with Motorola, yes, it's guaranteed coverage.
Right.
This is that was the coverage that they're guaranteeing at this point. Now, if we want to go out and do a drive test, have them prove it and do a test, there's a cost to that.
It sounds like to me.
And I think that's important for the
Going to
democracy of our
state
town.
system.
Well, there's different kinds of tests that can be done too. Each one has its own price tag.
Good.
We want to do a system correctly once.
Right, and to me, that's an automated test where they break the town up into quarter-mile squares. They have an automated
That's one
system
more
that they
question.
drive, and it does
That's right, he's
what's called
absolutely
the error
exhausted
rate,
every possible side.
and that translates to a quality of voice.
Yeah, I actually
Would,
like
that.
if we did. Other than-
I hope
That'll
that
be
this
part of
helps
it.
by having questions.
Yes, I heard you.
I'm just looking for permission to proceed to get that price,
You
and
know
that
we'll
price
help
will
with
be
this, don't you?
itemized to a point. You're going to have a parts list, and you're going to have a price for that parts list. You're not going to have every item priced out in that. The testing will have a price. The life cycle will have a price.
So Paul, have we exhausted every potential option in town for, in Northford side?
That either exists or from a physics standpoint, yes, we have.
Chief, we talked about Young's Apple Orchard. What was?
There's already a tower there. We eliminated that.
Okay.
Actually, Wallingford is on that tower. It really didn't do anything for us. As a standalone, the only show in town, in that end of town, it was horrible. And it really didn't add anything for us once we had Station 4 of the school.
And does the water company ever do anything?
There's a tower, there's a water tank. We looked at it. It's got some shadowing. The water tank is only about 40 feet tall. I think I planned it, I had them do the maps at 45 or 50 feet. It doesn't do a lot for us. Could we put a monopole, a tower up there? It might have to be 180 feet. But But we did look at that site also.
Hmm.
It's the topography of the town.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the glacier wasn't nice to you.
Okay. Well, there are no other options for us right now that you can conceivably.
You know, again, I gave the coverage parameters that was driven by the fire department,
Yeah.
because they're in buildings to Motorola,
Sure. Yeah, I
and this is
understand.
what they came up with.
Mhm.
There was a couple of other things that we eliminated because, you know, if they put a spot on a map, that doesn't mean that you're gonna put a tower there.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? We good? We'll reconvene on the 10th at 4 PM. Thank you, Paul, for the update.
You're quite welcome. It's nice to finally meet
Thank you for
everybody.
answering my questions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Paul.
I know we were redundant on some of it, but it's been quite a while, and this is a huge undertaking for all of us, so. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Aye. Thank you.
2 weeks from